So for a Lunch and Learn session, our Lunch and Learn is a journey made possible developing a clinical academic career within the NHS. In this Lunch and Learn, our guest speaker, Hannah Lane, will share her personal journey in building a clinical academic career from newly qualified speech and language therapist to a research leader. Just a few housekeeping points for everyone. Please make sure that you mute your microphone. And just note that this Lunch and Learn session is recorded, and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and I will put the link down the chat. Also, if you have any questions, please save it until later on, and then we will try to answer all the questions after the presentation. So I will introduce Hannah. So Hannah Lane is specialist speech and language therapies and NIHR Doctoral Clinical and Practitioner Academic Fellow. So I'll hand into lovely Hannah.
Thank you so much, Divine. That's a bit of a mouthful, my job title, so well done, and thank you for getting that accurate. So it's really lovely to be here. Still a little bit in shock at being asked to come and present to you all, but really looking forward to just sharing my experiences really and my story. There's no right or wrong, but just to really show and highlight how someone can develop a clinical academic career within the NHS right from newly qualified like I did, and how that's kind of worked with Doncaster and Bassetlaw and the benefits for both of us. So Divine did a great job at introducing me, but just to give a little bit more context, my name is Hannah Lane. I'm a specialist speech and language therapist. I work at Doncaster and Bassetlaw teaching hospitals. Until recently, I was also the clinical therapies research lead there, and I was also lucky enough to have a secondment to teach at the University of Sheffield. And I'm also a facilitator for the community of allied health professional research in Yorkshire as well. I've had a little bit of an identity change recently because on the 1st of April, I started my NIHR Doctoral Fellowship. So just getting used to that, settling in, and it's really given me the time to reflect on my career so far and how I've got there, the support that I've had, and the ups and downs that that's brought. So I'm really passionate about sharing that journey with people, trying to promote clinical academia within the NHS and just reflect on some of the benefits that that can bring. So why am I here? I've kind of already covered this, but I think a lot of us understand and know about the benefits that clinical academic careers within the NHS can have. You hear about this a lot. I think there's a real understanding that it can be a really positive thing for individuals and for clinical teams as well. But I think sometimes it's great when you hear about it, but when you've got staff issues, patient waiting lists are going up, budget cuts all over the place, all sorts of different priorities and different pressures, I think that can be really hard to know how you can possibly go around releasing members of staff from a manager point of view. Also, from a person on the ground, I think just having the headspace to even think I could apply for a funding stream or take time out of work to do some research, I think is just impossible for people to even get started with. I don't have all the answers, but what I do have is my examples, my journey of how I've gone about doing that and how I've been supported within my NHS Trust. So just for a little bit of context about the programme that I will be referencing throughout this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the National Institute of Health Research Integrated Clinical Academic Programme. It's sometimes called the ICA programme for short. As anyone that's in clinical academia or research will know, acronyms, they just love them. So there's so many different acronyms. The most convoluted titles in the world. So I just thought I'd give a little bit of context behind which ones I'll be talking about. NIHR have recently changed the names of these programs. They like to keep us on our toes and they change the names every now and again. They have actually simplified it now. So the pre-doctoral is just called the Pre-Doctoral Fellowship, and the doctoral is now just called the Doctoral Fellowship, which makes it a lot easier than the names that I had when I applied for them, as you can see here. But just to say, I'll be calling it the PCAF, which is the Pre-Doctoral Fellowship, and the DCAF. That's what they were when I applied, so that's how I'm going to call them. But I would suggest anyone wanting to look at these, go onto the NIHR website, and you can expect it to now be called Pre-Doctoral Fellowship and Doctoral Fellowship. Okay, so this is my journey from newly qualified practitioner role. This is massively simplified, and it probably looks a bit more positive and straightforward than it has been. But just, I really wanted to show how the words in purple are my funding awards that I've had through NIHR. And the words in red are my kind of promotions or other opportunities within my job role. And I just wanted to highlight how interlinked they are, and how kind of I've not done a load of research awards followed by clinical promotions. I've really kind of integrated them both within my career. And I do feel that one has led to the other. The opportunities that I was given in my clinical and leadership role within the NHS led to successful applications to NIHR, and vice versa. My NIHR awards gave me the training, the headspace, the experience to apply for more senior clinical roles as well. So just really wanted to bust the myth, I think, that people have that you need to be a really experienced clinician to then go and do a research award, because I went on to the NIHR internship the year after I graduated. So I very much built my career up with all 4 pillars of practice at the same time. I always have to, at this point, just point out that I have been unsuccessful twice to the NIHR awards. I think it's really important that we reflect that it's not very straightforward, and anyone that's been in the academic world or has applied for NIHR awards will know how difficult and competitive they are. So I never like to act like it's all been straightforward. I've had some quite serious setbacks. It can really take your confidence can have a real knock when you get these rejections. And I think that's even more important at that point, that you have a supportive employer team behind you, because I really needed pulling up and being told that I could go again and that it would be okay. And I did reapply to both of those schemes and get them the second time. But there's been one consistent throughout my career, and that has been my NHS Trust, Doncaster and Bassetlaw. They've been my employer ever since I left university, and they continue to employ me now, and they are the host of my doctoral fellowship. So I just want to integrate them throughout this, and how that's worked really, and how our partnerships worked to get me to where I am. So just some kind of nuggets, I guess, in terms of some tips that I found that Doncaster did really, really well in terms of getting me into research immediately, and how they've supported me throughout. So from day one, research was absolutely on the agenda at inductions. So they had the clinical therapies research lead at the time, who was my successor, and she came and talked about research, about the opportunities, about the different funding streams that people had within the trust. And it just really felt like this is on the agenda here, and it's something that they really care about. I was interested in that straight away, so I talked about that with my clinical manager. I've had 2 clinical managers whilst working at Doncaster, and neither of them have been clinical academics. Neither of them have been massively involved in research, or would say that they have a huge amount of experience or knowledge in research or academia. But they really acknowledged my interest, and they knew where to signpost me to within the trust to get more support. So they made meetings with people from the research and innovation team to come and meet with me, and I just really felt like that was something that they were really supportive of straight away, even if they couldn't answer all of my questions. There's constantly opportunities circulated via email, drip down through the clinical managers from the research and innovation team around internal opportunities, research projects that were happening, portfolio studies that were running across the allied health professionals, research funding awards when the deadlines were. There were always contacts on those emails saying, if you're interested in applying, contact us, we'll support you with your application. And it just very much feels, as I said, that it's a priority. There was always celebration of other people's successes that I saw on Facebook, the staff Facebook group, on our bulletin that went around. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise. I'm just going to see if I can everyone just make sure they're muted. Thank you. So there was always a celebration of other people's successes, which really leads you to feel like this is something that I could do as well, and is going to be really valued here within the trust. When I did decide that I was going to start applying for the NIHR internship and then the following awards after that, I was allowed reasonable time for the application. And I just want to explain quickly what reasonable means. Um, as I said, there's competing priorities. Anyone that's applied for these NIHR schemes will know the applications are hefty. They take a lot of work. And when I was applying, NIHR didn't have any support for that application time. There are now application funding pots that you can apply for that buys you out of clinical time just to develop the applications. So I think that's a really positive step. That wasn't a thing when I applied, so I very much did have to do the work alongside a full-time clinical role, which is really tricky. I wouldn't say I saw less patients or was given time, less caseloads or anything like that whilst applying. I think it was just a respectful compromise that because I work with children, there are kind of ebbs and flows with how busy we are. Summer holidays, Christmas holidays tends to be a quieter time when the schools are closed. So if I had seen the amount of children and done all the work and done all the mandatory stuff that I needed to do, if I then approached my clinical manager and said, and I kind of had to put a case together and say, can I have a couple of days now to work on my application? Then I was allowed to do that. And I think it is that kind of respectful compromise that has worked all the way through for me. I did have to do some work in my own time as well. And I will never be shy about saying that to people that I think, as I said, the pre-application funding is hopefully making that a little bit easier. But that was the case for me. I was given formal study leave to to attend conferences and network events that were research conferences and also clinical in the field of cleft, which is where my research and specialism lies. Again, it was a little bit of a compromise. So as long as I could show that I was going to bring something back to the team or the trust, do some training, write a blog, publish something in the bulletin, something to bring back to the trust, then I was allowed funding to go on those to those events, which really helped me with building up a supervisory team and to strengthen those applications. Right from the start, there's been open discussions around funding arrangements. Any clinical managers or people that have been involved with the NIHR awards will know that you get funding for the person's time, which is all well and good, but it's not always as easy as NIHR make it seem in terms of actually using that funding, because backfilling someone for 38 days is really, really pretty much impossible. So there was always open, immediate conversations with my clinical manager, myself, finance, research and education, and anyone else that needed to be involved in terms of how we were best going to use the funding to support the clinical team. So it wasn't always like for like another band 7 in for 38 days, but sometimes it was upskilling some of our band 5s and band 6s. Sometimes it was resources to support the team. So there was always open discussions around funding, which I think really helped my clinical manager to see the benefits of having that backfill. And I've talked about compromise. And then kind of parallel to my NIHR awards, I've also been supported by the Trust just to develop as a clinical academic, even without the NIHR funding. So I was supported into the role of clinical therapies research lead, which was 1 day a week, where I supported research across allied health professionals. And I know my clinical manager, who obviously released me for a day a week and permanently recruited to that day, said how much of a benefit it was to have the clinical therapies research lead sitting within her team, because it just meant that I knew the latest research update and all the things that were going on, and was able to support the quality improvement and service evaluation projects that were happening within the department. I was also really fortunate to be offered a secondment to the University of Sheffield. That was completely organised by our Director of Research and Education, Sam Debbage, who I think a lot of you will know. And it really was just to give me the opportunity to have that more leadership academic side on my career, to apply for the doctoral fellowship. But also, again, there was a compromise, and it had to lead to benefits back to the trust. So University of Sheffield are our partnership university, one of them. So there had to be some sort of level of partnership there, and I had to write reports every couple of months about the impact that that was bringing back to the trust. So you don't get anything for free. I got amazing opportunities, but there were benefits coming back in to Doncaster as well. And what I'd like to do next, I'm sorry if some of you are really familiar with these schemes, but just for those that aren't, I just want to have a quick talk about the NIHR fellowships, talk about what they can provide for you and how I've used them. So I'm going to talk about the internship first. I know there's some changes going on with this at the moment, but the internship when I did it, which was a long time ago now, was hosted by Sheffield Hallam University. It's more locally run than the others. And it's 38 days away from, well, it was 38 days away from clinical duties. And the idea is that it's really a dip your toe in the field of research. And is this something that you would like to pursue? It gives you some training, some experience, some courses, and really just opening your eyes to the world of clinical academia and whether it's something that you want to move forward with. So I was a baby clinician. I had just passed my newly qualified practitioner competencies. I knew that I had an interest in cleft palate, which is extremely specialised in speech and language therapy. It's really hard to get into because it's regionalised into kind of 16 UK teams. And if you don't sit in those teams, it's really hard to get the experience for that. It's one of those things where they want you to be 30 years old with 45 years of experience. It's one of those jobs, which was really tricky. So I honestly went on to the internship more to try and gain some clinical skills, because I thought I need to get out of Doncaster and work and network with some cleft teams, and some cleft academics. And that's really why I went into this, more for a clinical side of things than a research side of things. I just kind of fell in love with research as I went, as well. But what the internship did for me is I really kind of identified and refined the area of interest. I knew I wanted to do some study in cleft palate, but I wasn't clinically experienced enough to know what the questions were really. So it was all about establishing that supervisory team for me. I met my supervisors, who are still my supervisors now. I'm lucky that they're super committed and super passionate about developing me, but also the project that we've chosen. And it was really them that shaped the gap that I needed to fill. And luckily, it's absolutely matches my personality, my interests, and yeah, it's just my absolute passion, which it has to be because it becomes your entire life if you do a PhD in it. So the area that I'm looking at is early intervention for children with cleft, really looking at that kind of first year of life and how we can improve speech outcomes as early as possible. So I kind of identified and refined that question. I established my supervisory team, which is absolutely key to everything else. I attended some conferences and networks where I started to meet um, different academics and clinical academics in this field, who again then just shaped everything for me. I visited the national cleft teams, which is absolutely what I wanted to do as part of this internship. And I really feel that this program really encourages you to do clinical skills and development as well, not just research, which is why it's really worked for me. I did do a project, a service evaluation project, just because 38 days is not enough time to go through ethics. So I developed some very basic skills in quantitative and qualitative analysis, but it was more than I came in with. So that was really great. And it just confirmed to me that, yeah, actually this is really what I wanted to do. I went into it to try and make some contacts with the cleft teams, thinking, well, I'm only 20, I was 21, I can move to the cleft teams. I just kind of need to get in there, develop some skills, and then I'll move NHS Trust to be in a cleft team. And actually, look where I am now. I'm still with Doncaster, and actually I've gone much more down the research route in cleft, and that's totally worked for me. So it just really built that path that I didn't think was possible. So then I went on to the pre-doctoral fellowship, the PCAF, as it was called at the time. As I said, I wasn't successful first time, so I just want to keep that in everyone's mind, but I went again and got it. So the PCAF is 1 year of funding away from clinical duties if you're full-time. I did it over 2 years, so I did kind of 2.5 days clinical, 2.5 days on the PCAF for 2 years. I justified that I was still quite early on in my clinical career, and I really wanted to continue um, doing clinical work alongside, which they were very supportive of. I have heard since then that they're not as keen on that as a justification anymore, but at the time that worked for me. So it did get a little bit more serious at the PCAF. They do expect kind of a master's level work. It is a master's level award. The reason it's not a master's, it's a pre-doc, is I think they found that a lot of people just dropped out after that bit. They got a master's, lovely, finished there. They really want you to do the PhD. So they changed it into a pre-doctoral fellowship because the whole aim of it is that you're developing yourself and your project ready for PhD level. But having said that, I know I've supported a few people through the PCAF now who have done a full master's as part of their PCAF, and that's quite celebrated and encouraged now by NIHR. So you can choose to do with it what you will, and I would recommend looking at the guidance because I'm a bit out of date. Um, but I decided not to do a master's. I was quite set that I was going to do the PhD, so it didn't really matter to me to have the letters after my name. So I just did courses here, there, and everywhere, really. Um, I completed master's modules. I did that in research methods. So, really now starting to think, what skills will I need for my PhD? And what skills do I feel like I don't have? Which was actually, when you start listing it, quite a lot for me. So, especially in statistics, done lots of courses in statistics. I refined my PhD question and topic. They really, really want you at this point to have a very clear project. They want you to basically have an application ready for the doctoral fellowship by the end of your pre-doc. I attended the World Cleft Congress, which was just an absolute starstruck moment for me that I never thought I would be there. I will say I was a little bit annoyed because this was fully funded. They would have paid for flights and everything as part of your fellowship. And the year before it had been in Hawaii, and the year before that had been in New Zealand. I applied for it fully funded, and it was in Edinburgh. So I literally just got the train. So I was a bit annoyed by that, but it was still amazing. And I just remember sitting there and looking at all these amazing researchers and just thinking, I just want to be you one day. So that was fab. Um, NIHR awards, especially this ICO award, is very much about developing as a clinician, as I've said, a researcher, but also as a leader. That's a really, really big thing for them now. So that's something that I did as part of my pre-doc, as I went on courses. I did some shadowing of our research leads and education leads. And just went to different kind of leadership events and courses as well. I started to mentor and supervise others, which is something that I really love. And I don't think it would have been possible without this fellowship, in terms of not just mentoring people within Doncaster, but also further afield. I actually mentor a speech and language therapist in Ghana, which has just been so I think it's more beneficial for me than it is her, to be honest. It's just been so eye-opening, and has really made me reflect on my practices professionally as well. And that was through links through the NIHR fellowship. And it just really strengthened my network and got me ready to have a team behind me for the PhD, which is absolutely what you need to get these huge research um, pro proposals accepted. And I've just started my doctoral fellowship, so I'm very, very early on in this. So I don't really have anything that I've necessarily achieved yet, but I can just quickly explain to you what I'm planning on doing and kind of the things that I have in my proposal. I won't talk in detail about the project today, but as you can see, it's all mapped out. I'm planning on doing 3 work packages across the 3 years. So I'm just in the joys of starting ethics at the moment for that. But I've got to start with the absolute nugget, don't I? So I do have a trip to the United States funded into my application. Um, and we'll be spending a bit of time with a professor and then another group of academics over there, which is going to be amazing. So that is absolutely something that NIHR encourages is international collaboration. So if a trip to the States doesn't promote this enough, then I'm not sure what will. National international conferences funded in, PhD level training and supervision with the University of Sheffield, where I'm registered, a personalized training plan that comes from the university, but also NIHR again, even though I'm registered with the University of Sheffield for the PhD, I can have courses and modules at different universities. So I've got a couple at Cardiff Met next year, which is specifically on clinical skill development. So Cardiff Met have cleft palate specialist modules. So that's funded into my NIHR fellowship. So that's going to really help me in that specialism side of things, not at all linked to the research. That is a separate kind of pillar that NIHR offer. And as I said, it's that leadership that I'm really excited to grow as part of this fellowship. I've kind of touched on this as I've gone, but I just really want to reiterate for me and for everyone that I talk to that have these awards, it is more than just research. Um, you are developing those 4 pillars of practice. But also I think for me it's given me the time and space outside of clinical work to really establish who I am as a person and as a professional, how I work best. So someone said to me the other day, I was saying that I struggle a bit after lunch sometimes to motivate myself, especially when I'm not in meetings and I'm just doing ethics or writing up a project or whatever. I really struggle after lunch. And they said, well, why don't you just work in the morning, but just make sure you get your hours in? And I was like, yeah, I can do that now. I don't have to work 8 till 4. Work as productive as you are. So it's just little things like that that it just gives you that flexibility to work out how best you work, how effective you can be. I think it's really taught me resilience and self-confidence, and I'm doing a series of courses at the moment on kind of self-confidence and well-being within clinical academia, which I'm finding really useful. Um, and just in terms of making friends and doing things that you aspire to do as a professional. So I'm hoping I've demonstrated the impact personally that these fellowships can have. But it leads me back to what's the impact been for Doncaster. They've supported me to do this. I'm now off for 3 years. So what's been the benefit for them apart from the fact that I'm having a fantastic time? So hopefully this slide, I'm sorry, it's a lot of text. I should have split this up a bit, but I'll talk through it. So this is what I think I have brought back to Doncaster, but also more widely what other clinical academic careers can have for an NHS trust as a whole. So if we start with the improved patient outcomes on the left, well, it's that fast translation of practice, of research into practice. So not only the research that I'm doing myself will I be able to share with my NHS team very, very quickly. But also, whenever I go to courses, whenever I go to events, workshops, conferences, any research that I hear about that I think, oh, that's interesting, that could change our clinical practice for the better, rather than having to wait for it to be published and then someone to find it and then to critically appraise it as a team, I literally go back after those events and I share it in team meetings. I always have loads of notes scribbled from every course and I immediately share that with my clinical team. Vice versa, AHPs in general, if I go to any kind of research conferences or hear about any trusts that are doing fantastic quality improvement things, I go back and I share that immediately. So it's that fast translation that you just don't get if you're waiting for things to be published and drip through. I think it's the facilitating of sharing of best practice. So again, as I said, I very much encourage my speech and language therapy colleagues who maybe aren't as research active by nature. I encourage them to try and access free resources, journals. There's a What Works database in speech and language therapy that I heard about. I passed on. I was like, this is a way that we can access evidence, and it's so clear, and it tells us what interventions work and what doesn't. So it's just that sharing of best practice that's going to improve patient outcomes because it's going to result in the change of practice for the better. I definitely think my team have become, and the AHP teams across from some work that I've done with my research and innovation colleagues at Doncaster, we've become a lot better at kind of accessing and critically appraising research that's been published, because a lot of it is quite hard to get research in a publication format. It's really hard to then implement that and see how that can work for our services. So I think that's a really important skill that I've been able to take back. It's the encouraging networking. So people that I meet at conferences and at events that are doing something fantastic in their speech and language therapy team, I take their contact details, I pass it on to my clinical manager, and we meet up as a team to discuss how that would work. And again, I try and do that for the other AHP teams as well. So it's that shared knowledge, and I think it's having clinical academics with a foot in both doors. They just have the access to those networks and to those contacts that they can share. And of course, with the skills and knowledge that I've got from courses around research, I've been able to support quality improvement, service evaluation, and research projects across the AHP teams. And if we're doing the research in-house, we're going to get faster and more relevant outcomes for our patient groups in Doncaster. So that's got to improve things. In terms of enhanced workforce engagement, again, it comes from that kind of promotion of evidence-based practice because I'm hoping I come across as passionate about it as I am. But I've been really able to say, how beneficial it can be to be research engaged, how much it's um, supported my development of my clinical skills as well. And it's a snowball effect. So I'm really pleased to share that we now have 4 allied health professionals working on an application for the pre-doctoral fellowship that I'm mentoring and supporting. And then we've got new members of staff that are seeing them do that are now emailing me and saying, oh, I'm quite interested in that scheme as well. So it snowballs as you have clinical academics within your team because they just bring that kind of experience, the passion, the enthusiasm. I think I'm a good example of staff retention and recruitment. So as I said, Doncaster actually wasn't really the best fit for me in terms of my clinical area of interest. We're not a cleft team, so there was only a um, certain role I can have within cleft in Doncaster, and there is a bit of a ceiling there. Clinically, I probably would have had more opportunities at a cleft team. I also don't live in Doncaster. My commute's over an hour. So, in terms of my personal life, Doncaster's not the best fit either. But I've stayed because of the opportunities and the support they've given me in all aspects of my career that I just don't think I would necessarily get elsewhere. And I very much am planning on returning to them after the doctoral fellowship and having some sort of research role there to give back. coming to events like this, coming to conferences, international, national conferences with the Doncaster and Bassett Law logo, it boosts that national and international recognition. And now we have lots of allied health professionals and other colleagues across our trust that are research engaged and active. They're getting publications, they're going to conferences, it's boosting that recognition for DBTH. And we've definitely had a few speech and language therapists apply for our Band 5 roles, saying, I've applied for Doncaster because I've heard how research active you are and how supportive of research this trust is. So that's amazing feedback from the different kind of activities that we've been doing. I don't think I need to linger on the personal development. I think I've talked about how much the opportunities that I've had have supported me. But I do want to just highlight that I feel that it's been really having a base at home, a feeling of belonging, that I know that I'm passing all of the knowledge that I'm getting and the experiences that I'm getting back to the NHS through my NHS Trust, which is why I was really keen to keep them as my host for my doctoral fellowship, where you do have the opportunity to go to universities to host it, where I felt that I wanted the NHS as my base still. And I want to finish on the economic value because I think this one's probably the trickiest. I think it's the one that's maybe the most important and the one that's maybe not talked about enough. I do think the economic one is a bit tricky because you very rarely get short-term benefit. You do have to look at the long-term values because short-term, you are releasing members of staff. And as I said, NIHR pay the backfill, but it's very hard to use that backfill sometimes, especially when we're struggling with recruitment anyway. But it is seeing that long-term benefit, and my clinical manager always has done. So obviously, with everything I've talked about already around improved patient outcomes, having innovative and efficient practice is going to lead to economic benefits. And we can only have innovative and efficient practice through the knowledge of research, through evidence-based practice, and having clinical academic members of staff means that you're going to be most up to date with innovative and efficient practice. So that's got to lead to some financial benefits. I have mentioned before that I come back from courses and come back from events and I share the knowledge. I mentor internally at Doncaster and Bassett Law for free as part of my role. And I provide training to the different allied health professional groups on how to um, critically appraise research, how to start service evaluation projects, how to analyze data. Myself and others provide that training, and that's all for free. So that's from having us as part of their workforce. My secondment to the University of Sheffield led to the start of research placements. So having students come from the university and do actual research placements with the clinical teams where they establish a gap or an issue within the service that the students then carried out a quality improvement or service evaluation project. It was often projects that had already been identified by the clinical teams, but they just didn't feel like they had the time or the headspace to do. So we got the students to do it, and everyone was a winner from that. The students have given us a really good feedback on how much it's enhanced their clinical skills, leadership skills, research skills. We're going to have more research engaged members of staff coming into the NHS, but also it freed up our staff and gave us great outcomes to inform our practice. I do mentor nationally as well on some schemes, and Doncaster have had the money for that to release my time, but I very much do it as part of my role anyway. So there's been some income for Doncaster from that. And as I said, it's compromise on the use of the backfill. So my doctoral fellowship is 3 years long. My clinical manager wasn't going to be able to backfill me for 3 years fixed term. That wasn't going to work. So as part of that kind of respect and trust, I agreed to give up my speech and language role permanently. I'm now employed by Research and Innovation for the duration of my fellowship. And that allowed my clinical manager to recruit permanently to my role. So it's that compromise, and because they've been so supportive of me, I was quite happy to do that. And we're already in discussions about what job role I might have when I come back. My fellowship means that I have 20% of clinical time. That's part of the ICA program, is that you keep 20% of clinical development and clinical time. So I still hold my cleft specialism and some dysphagia work. I do 1 day a week for Doncaster, and that's fully funded by my fellowship. So my clinical manager's actually getting that time for free now. So there is some investment coming back in. It's been a long time for my clinical manager to see that kind of level. But it just shows there is more than just the kind of short-term, like-for-like backfill money that you get from these schemes. Okay, and I just want to finish, oops, frozen, there we go, with this message that supporting clinical academic careers isn't just investing in individuals, it's investing in better care, empowered staff, and a future where research and clinical practice walk hand in hand. Thank you so much. My contact details are at the bottom. I'm happy to take any questions now, but if anyone wanted to email me to chat about anything further, I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. If there's any question, please raise your hand or put in the chat. A question from Louise?
Hello. Oh, can I get my camera to come on? There we are. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you, Hannah. That was great. I'm a speech and language therapist as well. Hannah followed a very similar path to yourself. I'd just be interested. I'm working at my doctoral application at the moment. I'm doing PCAF Bridge right now, so working on that as we speak. And probably aiming to go down a similar path to what you have as well. It'd be if I could get in touch maybe about those contracting arrangements. That sounds really interesting because I think that is a concern in a very, very small team where you go away for 3 years and then there's an expectation that you're going to come back again. That's just not realistic. So it's interesting to hear that you've done something to kind of provide an answer to that, really. And the other side of things that you were talking about, so I'm professional lead for speech therapy where I work, and part of my role there is looking at that general research engagement for other staff as well. Although that I'm finding that very, very difficult. So maybe I'll be interested to hear. It sounds like it's worked very well for you where you are. So I'd be interested to hear more about your successes with that and how that's been achieved in more detail.
Yeah, thank you so much, Louise. That's really interesting, and absolute best of luck for your doctoral fellowship. I'm more than happy for you to get in touch. I'm happy to share my application as well. I think that's something that we really, really need to do and support each other, because I know I got a lot of application support from other people. Just to say, for people that don't know, the pre-doc bridging I didn't mention is a kind of separate arm to the pre-doc where you just get a day a week, Louise, for a year as part of an application.
So I'm doing 2 days a week for a year at the moment. I think there's an option, so I was awarded it last year. I think there was an option to do 6 months more intensively, 4 days a week or something for 6 months, or 2 days a week for a year. So I've been doing it 2 days a week for a year, but that was because I already had a funded MRes, which was funded by NIHR in a different scheme a few years ago. So I don't know if that's still the case for fellowship applications for this year, but I didn't have the option to apply for the full PCAF. I was only eligible to apply for the bridge because I already had an MRes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the pre-doc, the PCAF, or the pre-doc fellowship as it's now called, generally is about developing those skills at master's level if you're already there, but you need a bit of support for the doctoral application because it takes so much time. The bridging funding is probably the one you want to look at. So yeah, that's one I didn't mention, so thank you. In terms of the contracts, very tricky. I'm only the second person to have a doctoral fellowship at Doncaster, so it is still very much kind of new, being worked out. how the hell do we do this? But I think our director of research and education, Sam, is so, like, she just champions it all the way, which really helps. It's not a perfect solution, so I am only on a fixed term at research and innovation, so I have given up my permanent role, which obviously leaves me a little bit at risk at the end. I was willing to do that because I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to a clinical role anyway, and I just felt that there'd be more opportunities. I hope it's with Doncaster, but if not, university roles, etc., postdoc. But yes, it's not 100% ideal, and I know lots of people struggle with this coming towards the end of the PhD in terms of what they go back to, and NHS teams just not being able to offer that level, which is why, unfortunately, we get NHS supporting all the way through, and then people leave to the universities, so then the NHS doesn't get the benefit. But it is an area that I think NIHR are really aware of, that support for postdoc, but definitely happy to have conversations about that, Louise. Yeah. And also research culture. I make it sound like it's all been really great and straightforward. It's not. I think the key for me has been working with the clinical managers, just specifically them, not even really for a long time working with people on the ground, just trying to get the clinical managers on board. I went to every clinical managers meeting and had a slot. And I think that is key, before we can even start to encourage our staff on the ground, the clinicians, because if they don't have the support from the clinical managers, they're not going to do it. So yeah, but yeah, more than happy to have conversations. Really, really interesting. I can see a message in the chat, and another speech and language therapist. My gosh, it's very rare that we dominate a room, isn't it? Though I will say, actually, on the decaf round that I got, they get you all together, and in a room of 10 of us, there was 3 speech and language therapists that were successful for the decaf as well. So watch this space for speech and language therapy. Currently completing my next steps. Hope you don't mind. I'll email you. Absolutely, yeah. I realise my slides have gone, but I'll pop my email address in the chat as well for anyone. And clinical academic internship. Yeah, more than happy to meet. As I said, I think it's something we really have to do in this field. They're so competitive and hard to get. I'm more than happy to send applications, to chat through with anyone. Interview prep. I will say I got so much support for my interview before the decaf. So yeah, please do get in touch. I'll pop my email address in now. Not sure if there are any other questions or points.
Hannah, are you going to be happy for your slide to be shared as well? That's my question.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Divine. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Christine. That's lovely.
I will email them around as well, including the link of the recorded lunch and learn session. So if anyone missed it or they want to share it, that will be great.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as I said, just email me if you come away and think, oh, I wish I'd asked that, or for anything else. Thank you.
I think there's no more question, and yeah. Thank you so much, Hannah, for the wonderful presentation. And like I said, I will email everyone about like the links and then the slides and your contact details as well if they missed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Divine. It's been brilliantly set up. So thank you so much for your organisation.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a lovely
Bye.
weekend.